there were countless encounters along the way. One of them was, as I said earlier, an encounter with myself. I was walking through the middle of southern France, and in an area that's very dry and rocky. And as I was walking along in the middle of the trail, there was a stone, a flat stone. It was right there on the trail. And someone had taken some white paint and had written amour with a capital A, love. And I looked down at that and I said, oh, that's a nice thought.
For your motivation.
Yeah. Amour, it's love. It's great. And then I walked about 50 meters further and I stopped. And I looked back and I did what a pilgrim is never supposed to do. I went back. And I took a picture. I didn't have a smartphone, it didn't exist then, so I had to put my pack down, get my camera out, take a picture of the stone. And what I didn't know was that from there all the way to Spain, I would see more stones where the same person had written the same word.
Hey, it's so astonishing.
Love with a capital L, amour with a capital A. On a stone. And the idea that came to me was that I realized that part of my problem in my parish was that I was still looking backwards. I was looking back to my previous parish where I had very close friends. I had 12 wonderful years. And it was like this was a metaphor of my life on the trail.
Yeah.
And the thought came to me, Jeff, you turned back because you thought that love was behind you. You didn't realize that love was also ahead of you. And in multiple forms. Yeah. And that experience helped me to, when I was finally able to apply it to my own life back at home, to realize that that was the image, the illustration of what I was doing in my mind was I was going back, thinking that love was behind me. And that to go ahead, to open myself to the love that was ahead of me was not to deny the love that I had already experienced.
So fascinating.
So again, I've got dozens, if not hundreds, of stories, but we don't have time for that. So.
But my next question: has a pilgrimage influenced your faith?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
I just did another. I've continued to do other pilgrimages since. I've hiked to Rome, I hiked to Canterbury in England from Switzerland, Assisi, the Waldensian Trail from northern Italy to here, and all these different places.
Yes.
And what struck me recently was I thought, when you're a pastor, it's your job, and you're supposed to be an exemplary believer. You're supposed to help people with their doubts. You're the person that people look to for help in being encouraged in their spiritual walk. But sometimes it becomes very theoretical. I've been in a situation like this before. I've met someone like this before, and this is what I can say to help them. Mm-hmm. But it can become a little bit. It's not really incarnated. Mm-hmm. And so what I've seen, and almost every time that I've gone off on these trails, is you look at situations and you say, there's no way that could be by chance. Yeah. Somebody has prepared that encounter. Yeah. Last summer, 2019, I hiked from Constance to Pavia in Italy. And I hiked alone. It was what they call the Emperor's Trail, the Kaiserstrasse. It was a very little known trail, but it was one of the paths or the trails that the Germanic emperors took to go to Rome, going over the Alps. And there were several times when I stopped because I was thirsty or because I needed something, and I ended up having this wonderful encounter. There was this village where it was a Sunday morning, about 11:30, and I walked into this village, and I had not been able to find a place to buy my lunch, my picnic. I was just hoping I could find something along the way. And there was this cafe. And I thought, okay, maybe I can ask the person in there to make me a sandwich or something. And so I went in and I sat down, ordered a cup of coffee, and started talking with the gal who she was not just a waitress, she ran the cafe. And fortunately, after a few minutes, we both realized that it was easier for us to talk together in Italian than in German. This was in the gray zone, the Grauland. And so we started talking, and I realized that she was a very spiritual person.
Yeah.
She came from ex-Yugoslavia. She had an icon there behind the bar, and she had done a bunch of paintings. She was a former high-level athlete. She had been a professional volleyball player, and but now she's about 60 probably, and when she found out that I had played semi-professional basketball here in Switzerland, that gave us a link. And we talked for quite a while, and when I got ready to leave, she said, you notice in my paintings there's always an angel. I said, oh, really? Why? And she said, well, I see them. I see angels. I said, really? You see angels? And she said, yeah, since I was 25 years old, I see angels.
Indeed.
And I said, 25. It's very precise. And she said, yeah. She said, after my first child, birth of my first child, I went into depression. And I didn't want to, I was about to end it all. And I met an angel. And since then, I see angels. And, we talked for a little while longer, and at the end, when I got ready to leave, she was closing at noon. And we just spontaneously gave each other a big hug.
Amazing. And
she wished me a good pilgrimage, and I wished her all the best. I said, I'll be thinking of you and praying for you on the way, and she said, and I will be for you as well. And as I walked out, I thought, I went into this place because I needed something to drink and something to eat. It's the only reason I stopped there. And in fact, I end up having this encounter with this woman who shares some very intimate things of her life with a total stranger. And I'm convinced that encounter was something that brought a lot both to her and to me. And that was the encounter absolutely impossible to plan or to foresee. And as I thought about that, and as I've thought about it since, it's been a year now, I think, Lord, you were there. You had something that's something that I had not planned, I was not looking for. But there were several encounters along the way. Another woman who told me after we talked for a while, she said, if you'd come 30 seconds earlier or 30 seconds later, I wouldn't have met you.
So excited.
So those are things that help for me that have strengthened my faith in the sense that with all my planning, with all my desire of what I want to do and everything, God found a way of showing me that He was there, that He had some encounters that He wanted me to have. And, you know, there are others that I can tell you about, but, and even that one, you know, we'll have to see whether you want to keep that on the cassette or not, because if it's being shown in a German-speaking area, it may get back to her, and that might not be a good idea.
Jeff,
I can tell you another one, though. If you want to replace what I just said with the other one, since you're going to edit this. Okay. When I set off on my first real long-distance pilgrimage to hike to Santiago, I was walking with my friend Peter, who was the banker from Zurich, and a third person named Felix. We didn't know it yet, but he was actually a Catholic priest. But he was incognito. He wasn't telling anybody he was a priest. And we were walking. It was month of June, very hot, 32, 34 degrees, something like that. And we're walking not far from the Rhone River, and we were running out of water, and it was getting hotter and hotter. And I turned to my two companions and I said, "Look, guys, we've got to find some water." There was no village for quite a while yet, and I saw this house, kind of isolated, and I said, "Let's go ask there." And we went up there, and we kind of had to go around the house and go through a gate and whatever, and calling out, "Is there anyone here?" And finally I got to the door and knocked on the door, and this woman came to the door. And I said, "You know, I'm really sorry to bother you, but we're pilgrims on the way of St. James, and we're just about out of water. Could we fill up our water bottles at your place?" And she said, "Oh yes, come on." And she invited us in. Actually, she invited us to the terrace that was behind the house, in the shade, fortunately. And we just filled up our water bottles. She asked us to sit down, offered us the coffee. And she started pouring out her heart to us. And we stayed there 45 minutes.
45.
And she just, shared all of the difficulties that she was going through. And, we encouraged her, we tried to, assure her or support our thoughts. And as we left her, I said to my two companions, I said, we needed water, but that woman needed a pastoral visit.
Right. Yeah.
And again, that's the thing that you don't plan. And again, the number of times it's happened to me where I'm thinking it's just my need that's important, not realizing that God has prepared an encounter that is going to really help the other person, not just me.
Correct. One fundamental question, should I walk alone the pilgrimage or not? What's your experience?
It's a very personal question.
Yes.
Not in the sense that I don't take offense to it being personal for me. Yeah. They say that there are as many ways to walk the Pilgrim Trail as there are pilgrims. You have some people who do the same stage, the same day, the same conditions, and what they'd have to say in the evening is completely different from somebody else. When I first told the people in my parish and my friends that I was going to be hiking to Santiago, they said, "Well, who are you going with?" I said, "I'm just going by myself."
Yes.
"You? But you love the contact with people, why are you going all alone? You're going to get lonely." It's particularly the first part across the first third of France there was no guidebook. It wasn't known. People that I met along the way didn't even know they were on the way of St. James, on the Camino de Santiago. Now there's a guidebook, and it's become much more well known. But I discovered that the fact that I was alone made the contact with people much easier. Surprisingly, I would have thought maybe that people would be afraid of somebody my stature, the beard and the whole thing. Who's this vagabond? But as soon as you are two, even you're a group. And I've walked a lot on pilgrim trails with my daughter, my oldest daughter, Bethany. And it's true, when there are two of us, we tend to talk to each other.
Yeah.
When there are three or more, the group is kind of self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And people are more hesitant, maybe, to break into that group. Whereas, again, when I would stop and just ask people for water, because it was so hot. It was the summer of 2003, which was the big heat wave. Affenhitze, I think we say in German. I don't know what it has to do with monkeys, but anyway, it was extremely hot.
Yes.
And so many times people would say, "Oh, well, I'll fill up your water bottle for you. Why don't you come out and have a drink on the terrace? Would you like some strawberries with that drink?" And I'd stay 45 minutes.
So your suggestion would be to walk alone.
It's very personal. It's not that it's better or worse. It's different. There are times after walking 5 days alone where I was very happy to meet another pilgrim. There were times after walking 5 days with other pilgrims, I was happy to have just silence.
Yeah.
And again, what's the one thing that surprised me was the number of single women that I met along the trail. Single women walking alone. Sometimes it was a woman who had just lost her husband and didn't, before deciding where to go from here, I need to get away and go hike this pilgrim trail. Sometimes it was, but I was very surprised at the number of women walking alone. But very rarely was there any safety issue.
Yeah.
I hiked for 4 months, and I've been back on that trail a number of times, and I met one woman who had a problem.
Only one?
One. She was a 19-year-old Irish girl, very pretty, and the problem that she had was with the hospitalero, was with one of the guys working in the pilgrim hostel.
Oh, yeah.
But in general, particularly in Spain, the pilgrims are respected. And so, and there's a solidarity among pilgrims. You watch out for each other. If you go into a store or a restaurant or whatever, and you have to go to the toilet or whatever, somebody will be there to watch your sack for you. So, I think there are advantages and disadvantages to both, but I'd say don't be afraid of walking the trail by yourself.
Important question. What do I take with me as a pilgrim? It's not so much. Very important.
When I first set off, my first experience where I did everything wrong, I had brought camping equipment. I had probably 15, 16 kilos on my back. Again, I said everything was in cotton. I just had too much stuff. In the end, 2 years later, when I set off to hike all the way to Santiago, I had read a book on preparing for pilgrimage, which I hadn't read the first time, and they had lists of things that you should weigh. And they say you should never go beyond 10% of your body weight. If you're a 90 kilo person like I am, that's 9 kilos. If you're a very lightweight woman that weighs 45 kilos, that doesn't make very much in your sack.
And what about clothes and so on?
Well, again, it depends on the season. If you're hiking in the fall or where temperatures can drop to freezing, it's different than if you're hiking in 45 degrees in the middle of August. And again, most people do not necessarily walk the whole trail at once.
Yeah.
Most people are going to do it in sections. They're going to do maybe 2 or 3 weeks here, or sometimes just 1 week. And then next summer they'll come back and do another segment. So obviously, when I left, I was planning on 4 months, especially with what the doctors had given me as the limit of how long I could walk each day. I figured out the calculation. You got 2,000 kilometers. That's going to be at least 100 days, if not more, at 20 kilometers. 100 days at 20 kilometers a day. And so, because of my first experience, and reading this book, I was weighing everything out. My wife was laughing at me, because I got down to where I was wearing my underwear. I was weighing my underwear, and she said, "Well, you're not going to put on a string, are you?" I mean, she's like this. It was getting down to where, okay, this thing is 60 grams and this one's 40 grams. Well, I'll take the 40 grams. And when I had finally set out, I had dropped my weight of the pack to about 10.5 kilos, down from 15 or 16.
And you have all times the possibility to clean your clothes and so on.
That's one of the things that you learn quickly as you get into your routine. But before we get into the routine, come back to the routine in a minute. When I got to Geneva, I ended up staying, there was a list of pilgrim friends or former pilgrims who signed up for what they call accueil jacquard, or pilgrim welcome. But you had to call ahead, and then they enjoyed having people stay with them. But it's not a professional structure here. It's not something where they go off on vacation or they go off and hike the pilgrim trail themselves. So I had to call 2 or 3 different numbers, and I found a place where Peter and I could stay. And it was a woman doctor at the University Hospital in Geneva. And she was telling us over dinner, she was telling us about her pilgrim experience. And she walked from Geneva to Le Puy-en-Velay, which is about 350 kilometers. She took off, she had, I think it was 5 kilos on her back.
5 kilos? Only 5 kilos?
Yeah. 5 or 6. But she showed us what she had done. She had cut off the labels on her clothes.
Indeed.
Her toothbrush, she kept the brush, cut off the handle.
No.
Seriously. I mean, we're getting down, where it makes a gram difference on the label, or if that, and she had taken it to an extreme.
Yeah.
But her partner that she lived with, he had done it with less than 4 kilos.
Yeah.
I mean,
4 kilos.
My sack empty weighed 2. 2 kilos. You got nothing in there. How do you do this?
Very special.
But again, they were hiking in the summer. They had very lightweight clothing, minimal clothing, shorts, very short shorts.
And no books?
No books. And so what I did before I left is I had different lists, and then it depends on what your interest and your priorities are. One thing that I wanted to do was to keep a journal. So I had several notebooks and a pen.
Yeah.
So that weighs. But every night, at the end of the long day of pilgrimage, I spent between 45 minutes and an hour every evening writing my journal of what I had learned, what I experienced during the day. But that's weight. I also brought along a dictionary.
Yeah.
When I was in Spain, I brought along a book that was more spiritual text to meditate on. Because of the health problems that I had a very healthy pharmacy, whereas the the pharmacy of the doctor that was down to 5 kilos, her pharmacy was a little baggy. It was a Ziploc bag. And she just had her cut-off toothbrush and she had a couple of Band-Aids. Virtually nothing in there.
Yeah.
Whereas I had a lot more. And since then, that part of because of the health problems I've had since then, my pharmacy has become even a little more, a little heavier yet. So.
It's really astonishing. 4 kilos, 2 kilos, incredible.
No, not 2. No.
But 4.
4
Yes.
is incredible. So, and there, like I said, there are some that say it's 10% of your body weight or 15% of your body weight, including what you have, your boots and everything else.
Jeff, we are looking for the future.
Good. Do it.
What are your plans for pilgrimages for the future? Do you have some?
I've always got projects. I've always got plans for future Huguenot Trails, which is why I've continued to do more trails over the years. I've probably done somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 kilometers of Huguenot Trails since I started.
Yeah.
But I would like to do, I hiked from here to Rome. And I would like to do the part from Rome down to the tip of the heel of the boot of Italy, which is what they call the Via Francigena del Sud. The Via Francigena is from Canterbury to Rome. I've already done that one. It's 2,000 kilometers as well, but north-south. I'd like to do that, and they've recently developed, in the last few years, the Huguenot Trails. And I did one from northern Italy to Geneva, which is not technically Huguenot, it was the Valdensian Trail. And but now there's a trail that goes, well, there are several trails. One goes from the south of France in the Cevennes to Geneva. There's another one that goes from Geneva across Switzerland up to the Rhine Falls and then up to the north of Germany. And my roots, going back 3 centuries, were in the central northern part of Germany, and I would like to do that trail.
So you have very exciting plans for the future.
I'd love to do it, but I've had some health problems, and that's slowed me down. So.
Jeff, thank you very much for your time. It was brilliant. It was amazing. It was great. Buen Camino, translation, good path. This is a greeting that every pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago knows well.
Buen Camino.
Yeah, and is a way of saying to another, have a good walk.
There's also something else they say.
Yes.
They say ultrea.
Ultrea.
Ultrea, which is an old Latin-based language, which means keep going.
Ultrea.
And it says ulterior, to keep going further.
Jeff, buen camino,
ultrea, et
sucea,
go further and go higher.
Go higher, have a good walk, and God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tillmann.
And see you again.